All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Please come in and take a seat. Happy Ravens Victory Monday. Yeah, we're gonna get started. That's what's supposed to happen when you score 40 points. You're supposed to win. You are supposed to win. We got it right this time. So thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. We all know we are here for the annual CTP tour. We are joined today by so many of our partners in government. I'm going to start on this row and then come back around. We are joined by our Council President Cohen, Councilman Parker, who has followed the Council President into the 1st District, Councilman Gray, who is the worst basketball player on the council, Council Vice President Middleton, who's definitely better than Councilman Gray, Delegate Edelson from the 46th District, Delegate Wells from the 40th District. I see Councilwoman Porter. Oh, I see you, Councilwoman Ramos, from the 10th District, Councilwoman Ramos from the 14th District, Delegate Boyce from the 43rd District. Delegate Boyce is an alum of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhoods, so that makes her especially exceptional in my eyes, of course. We have Councilman Blanchard from the 11th District, Councilman Jones from the 12th District. He is the muscle on the City Hall basketball team. If you thank Anthony Mason, if anybody knows about the 1990s. Councilman Dorsey from the 3rd District. I believe him and the NTA administrator rode down together from Northeast Baltimore. The birthday girl, Delegate Addison, happy birthday. Let's see. Oh, you got to move your head. Oh, all right. Delegate Embry, a Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice / Muncie alum, so she's also exceptionally special in my eyes. And then my delegate, Parker and Spencer's mom, Delegate Smith, is here as well. And then we have a Delegate Young, who is the delegate that lost to the mayor in track and field the most. So thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I think I hit everybody. There we go. Good morning, everybody, and thank you to be here. It's great to have our state colleagues here with us, and of course, our acting secretary, Secretary Bidle, to discuss the state's consolidated transportation program. We are always grateful for your partnership, especially the work to address both local and regional transportation challenges. Baltimore is proud to be the economic engine and transportation hub of the great state of Maryland. And as you know, we're the only jurisdiction in Maryland responsible for maintaining all of our roads and even a highway, I-83, that we all love, within our city's limits. Between the fiscal years of 2015 and 2025, Baltimore spent $131 million of our HUR funding on state routes. That's compared to just $14 million on local streets. 90% of that funding has been spent on state roads. We know that the vast majority of our investments and need lie along roadways typically maintained by MDOT elsewhere in the state of Maryland. And to be frank, we know this is not sustainable. MDOT must consider for us assuming maintenance responsibilities for I-83 and I-295. This has already been done successfully with 95 and 395 because maintenance of these complex, expensive, and I do mean expensive, assets is beyond what could be reasonably expected of any county, or in this case, the city. As a result of the current system, highway user revenue continues to serve as the backbone of our transportation budget. Our allocation of highway user revenue funding increased from 8.3% in 2023 to 9.5% in 2024, and we saw the impact across the board. Thank you very much to our partners in the General Assembly. As an example, in 2023, we built 64 speed humps. In 2024, we built 681. And I had 681 emails to make sure that everyone knows how real that is. In 2025, we kept our progress going as our fund allocation rose to 11%. This helped us fund projects like the rehabilitation of 25th Street and Huntington Avenue, improvements in Johnson Square, pedestrian safety improvements on West North Avenue, and a $16 million investment to replace deteriorating traffic signals that have been there since I was in high school. Our current need requires us to increase that to $36 million by 2027. But because of our scheduled reductions to our allocation, we may be forced to cut back $8 million. We know from experience that maintaining our infrastructure, much of which is aging, requires predictable and sustainable funding, which is why these scheduled reductions are deeply concerning to us. We will be fighting during the General Assembly with our wonderful delegation to maintain our current allocation moving forward. But I want to underscore to our MDOT colleagues just how impactful previous increases have been and how detrimental cuts would be. Beginning in fiscal 2028, Baltimore's share of revenue is set to drop from 12.2% to 9.5%. That would create a $70 million hole in our capital program. 2 years of 12% HUR will only make a dent in our infrastructure backlog, and 9.5 will entirely fail to support our long-term deferred maintenance needs. As a reminder, that would set us back to where we were when we were just building 64 speed humps a year. This plan does not provide the capital funding we need to complete the basic infrastructure improvements and maintenance. Take, for example, ADA compliance. In the past year, we have constructed in Baltimore nearly 400 ADA compliant ramps, advancing equity and accessibility in our communities. Reaching basic compliance with the federal ADA settlement will require approximately $12 million annually in ramp construction beginning in fiscal 26, and preserving that funding allocation at current levels is essential to sustaining this work. But the same goes for our transit needs. We all know nearly 1/3 of our households do not have access to a personal vehicle. Over 24,000 residents commute into downtown Baltimore every day from all over the city and beyond. And many of our students commute to school on public transit. Everyone who caught the bus on MTA in the room, raise your hand. There we go. The ones that didn't, they were spoiled. Their parents dropped them off. Be More Bus improvements will help us specifically address these needs. As the plan states, 80% of MTA's ridership is on core bus service. We know the need is there, which is why we are deeply concerned that the 10-year plan is not funded in the 6-year CTP draft. This week, you all can anticipate a letter from my office that underscores the need to fully fund this program. In addition to bus investments, the light rail modernization project will improve safety and service for key transit infrastructure, and the transformative Baltimore Red Line will connect West Baltimore with Baltimore County, downtown Baltimore, Bayview, and countless residents and places in between. But none of that is possible without additional capital funding to make up for our scheduled reduction in HUR allocation. Baltimore cannot continue to grow and thrive, meaning Maryland cannot continue to grow and thrive without this deeper partnership with our friends in the state government. I look forward to working with each and every one of you to manage the transportation challenges and opportunities facing the city and state in the years to come. Thank you very much. And I think before I turn it over to you, Madam Secretary, we're going to hear from our City Council President, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Secretary, to the entire MTA team that is here. And let me just welcome you to Baltimore. Thrilled to have you all here with us for the road show. Want to just thank all of my colleagues who are here, both from the City Council and from the state delegation. I feel like for the last 2 years, we have really shown up together, and it makes a huge, huge difference. I also want to thank the mayor for his leadership. I want to thank our city administrator, who I see over here, and all of us, the advocates, the transit riders that have come here today. Also want a special shout out to our Land Use and Transportation Chair, Ryan Dorsey, for excellent organizing. Where are you? There you are. Excellent organizing and advocacy these last 2 years. Let me just say, as the mayor said, we are here because this is Baltimore's moment, but only if we adequately fund our transportation system. And while states like Pennsylvania and Illinois struggle to fund transit in particular, Maryland has an opportunity to demonstrate true leadership in this moment. Unfortunately, that type of leadership is not clearly demonstrated through this draft CTP. In June, MTA released Be More Bus, a 10-year visionary plan to create the high-quality, frequent, all-day bus service that Baltimoreans were promised with Baltimore Link but never received. The plan also identified how much in capital investment it would take to achieve this vision: $650 million for a fifth bus division and $365 million for additional buses. That's just over $1 billion total. In this 6-year CTP, Be More Bus is mentioned and celebrated, but not funded. In fact, capital spending on core bus decreases by $24.5 million compared to last year's CTP. We cannot afford to let the Be More Bus plan sit idle on the shelf. Our young people cannot wait 10 years to get to school on time. As a former teacher, I saw firsthand how the transit crisis contributes to our chronic absenteeism crisis. Our workers cannot wait 10 years to access jobs. Right now, the typical resident can access only 7.5% of our region's jobs with a transit ride under 1 hour. And our city and region cannot wait 10 years to reap the many economic development benefits that come with transformative transit investment. The cities who are growing and thriving in the 21st century are those that have made major transit investments. And it's not just cities and states with transit-friendly governments that one would expect, but cities like Houston, Charlotte, and Atlanta. If they can do it, why can't we? Even Indianapolis, which sits in a state that banned light rail investments in 2014, has built an innovative and wildly successful bus rapid transit line that generated over $700 million in economic development. It has another opening in 2028 and a third line in planning. If they can do it, why can't we? This is why, and we do appreciate sincerely improvements that were made last year in the CTP, but this is why we cannot take our foot off the gas. The $6 million decline in state of good repair funding for transit does not work for Baltimore and must be reversed. We must build the Red Line and continue planning the north-south corridor, which will serve as the backbone of a high-quality, frequent transit network. Finally, we need MDOT's partnership in undoing the 28 HUR funding cliff, as the mayor said. Our transit system and all transportation modes depend on well-maintained roads. Baltimore is responsible for maintaining more of our roadways than any municipality in Maryland. I trust that with your partnership and collaboration with our incredible General Assembly that showed up today, we will get this thing done for Baltimore. We need your commitment. Thank you, and I look forward to a productive meeting today.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll now turn it over to Director Macbeth.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Veronica Macbeth. I'm the Director of Baltimore City Department of Transportation. On behalf of Baltimore City DOT, I want to echo the mayor's appreciation for Acting Secretary Biddle and take some personal privilege to just say it's an honor to work with you in this capacity. She and I have grown together through our times at MDOT, MTA, working, and me being with the state, but also in a women's transportation seminar program. So it's just phenomenal to see her in this role. So little butteriness, but heartfelt. So on behalf of DOT, I want to echo the mayor's appreciation for Acting Secretary Biddle and the MDOT team. Your partnership and commitment and vital to advancing Baltimore's transportation system. Baltimore is uniquely situated in Maryland, and our city sits at the heart of the state and the crossroads of the Northeast Corridor. As the home of the Port of Baltimore and the direct connections to I-95, I-83, and critical freight and passenger rail lines, Baltimore plays a central role in the economic vitality of both Maryland and the broader region. Ensuring that Baltimore's infrastructure needs are addressed is not just a local priority, but it is also a statewide and regional imperative. So I'm going to start with talking about some of our primary priorities, which is HUR, the highway user revenue. So Baltimore has made very meaningful progress toward creating safer and acceptable infrastructure. For example, we have installed, as the mayor said, nearly 400 ADA compliant ramps, and we are actually closer to the 500 mark, as Councilman Blanchard let me know. So please look out for a fun post that'll be on our social media platforms. We've had to scale our needs to continue to far outpace resources available. So highway user revenues are essential to nearly every core project Baltimore City DOT does, and every activity, from filling potholes and resurfacing streets to repairing bridges and to upgrading critical corridors. And the current level of HUR grant funding is serviceable, but it is not enough to address the massive level of need. Beginning in fiscal '28, Baltimore's HUR share is set to fall from 12.2% to 9.5%. Creating an annual funding gap of $70 million and a fiscal cliff that will be felt for generations to come. For over a decade, Baltimore has grappled with a massively reduced allocation of HUR funds, and while originally started because of the 2008 recession, funding cuts stretched into the 2020s and costing our city nearly $1 billion in lost revenue. So between fiscal 15 and fiscal 25, Baltimore contributed $131 million of its HUR on projects along state routes, compared to just $14 million on all of our other roads. As it goes for deferred maintenance, Baltimore faces a deferred maintenance backlog exceeding $2.1 billion, with $1.8 billion found along state routes alone. The city's aging traffic signals will require a minimum of $380 million in investment to create a basic, I'll say it again, a very basic state of good repair over the next decade. This figure is constrained to traffic lights in the downtown and only along major gateways. So we cannot hope for funds or our needs while grappling with the plummeting share of HUR funding. This scale is unmet need, and it is daunting and unsustainable. And without an adequate amount of state support, Baltimore's infrastructure will continue to languish and decay. As far as transit priorities, which are also one of the critical priorities for the city, every day more than 24,000 Baltimore City residents commute downtown, and nearly one in every three households lacks a car. This May alone, MTA's core service moved nearly 5 million riders in Baltimore region, and that is light rail, metro, and local bus. And for Baltimore, public transit is not a luxury. It is a critical resource for tens of thousands of low-income families. So in closing, that is why we were asking the state to fully fund Be More Bus and to ensure that Baltimore Red Line moves forward. These major transit projects are an important step toward addressing a historic pattern of disinvestment in Baltimore City and the most vulnerable communities. Furthermore, I want to urge the state to consider directly supporting the maintenance needs along I-83 and Route 295, as was done in I-95 and I-395 years ago. These highways are regional assets that serve commuters and freight in the Baltimore region and beyond. The scope of their long-term upkeep exceeds the city's capacity, and the maintenance of these assets should be in the state's hands. Finally, and most importantly, it is critical that the state preserves Baltimore's share of HUR. We can work with what we have and not a dollar less. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Director. Madam Secretary, I will turn it over to you, but I will announce that I will be leaving shortly. I have to go to a high school that we call Merville's West Side Practice Facility. That will be Carver for some big announcements in just a few minutes.
Understood, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for spending the time with us here this morning. Also, thank you for spending the time with us this summer at the MACO meeting. I think that we got to talk about a lot of these shared priorities, and so appreciate your time here today. Know that we are still in good hands with Director Macbeth and other representatives of your team and the esteemed council and delegation who are here with us today. I do have to take a moment of personal privilege, as Director Macbeth did, to just say that it is really an honor to, the journey that we've been on together and to both be here in these seats. Mr. Mayor, sorry for being in between our moment here, but if you'll indulge us just a minute, these roles are never easy ones, and it is helpful to be part of a community within transportation that we all really do try to support each other day in and day out, given whatever kind of stressors come our way. Thank you, Mr. Council President, as well for your remarks. And thank you, everyone who is here today. That goes for members of the advocacy community, members of who are elected officials, who are special interest groups, my own team. I think, Mr. Council President, you mentioned it as well. There are times when these meetings were not as well attended, and I will say that we do not do anything in regards to the CTP based on attendance at the meetings, although we do see varying levels of attendance and engagement. And what I would just like to thank everyone for is the engagement that continues, not just here at these meetings, but as we continue to work year round, whether it's in individual districts, individual projects, individual meetings with the modes here. I think that it's really important and a sign of a lot of progress that we have made in building and sustaining really meaningful partnerships. So I just want to thank all of those. That was a very long point of personal privilege, but I do appreciate everyone's attendance here this morning. So to be back on the record with the official remarks, for the record, I'm Samantha Biddle, Acting Secretary of the Department of Transportation in Maryland. And we do thank you for inviting us to provide an overview of our draft 6-year Consolidated Transportation Program, more commonly known as the CTP. With me today are various members of the MDOT team. I'll allow each of them to introduce themselves when it is their turn. And as you know, we have many members of our staff here today who can help you out after today's meeting and going forward with any other questions or concerns that you have. I do want to try to keep our updates concise because my goal is to listen to your concerns and provide answers and feedback as much as we're possible to. And I do want to, again, I know Mayor Scott had to step away. Ms. Leach here as well. Thank you so much for being here and representing the city. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to connect, understand, and look at ways where we can partner together to accomplish these shared goals. I referenced the meeting that we had over the summer, and during that meeting, one of the things that we talked about was support in federal funding and grants for projects. And I think we have a really healthy dialogue that continues with our team and yours, and we continue to keep in touch about opportunities to advance those efforts. If we turn to the draft CTP, hopefully everyone has dove in before coming here today. It is important to know that MDOT is utilizing every dollar and making strategic investments in the Moore-Miller administration's transportation priorities. Those priorities, if we're looking at 3 major buckets, are enhancing safety, maintaining our system so that it is in working order, and driving economic growth across the state, and that includes right here in Baltimore City. The draft CTP is an exciting follow-up to a very productive legislative session this past year, and I want to thank our General Assembly partners very much for allowing us to be able to publish this plan today. Along with Governor Moore's leadership and the support of the General Assembly, we were able to secure roughly $400 million in additional transportation revenue every year. With these additional dollars, MDOT is stretching this funding by combining and matching it with federal resources and financing options, turning the $400 million into an additional almost $700 million in annual transportation funding. That one's empty. So sorry. Without these additional resources, MDOT would have seen sustained and deepened cuts to transportation, not dissimilar to those that Director Macbeth mentioned in her remarks. And thankfully, those cuts are not necessary in this plan. Instead, I can share that the draft CTP includes investments in Baltimore City and all across Maryland. To get into the details of the draft CTP a bit more, our balanced 6-year capital budget is $21.5 billion. The result is an increase of nearly $300 million, compared to last year's final CTP. The additional dollars are also being used to take significant action to further maintain our system and keep it in working order, ensuring millions of Marylanders can get where they need to safely and reliably. Some of these highlights include getting transit in the Baltimore region back on track with a nearly $1.4 billion investment to modernize the 32-year-old light rail system, continuing to support the city's Hanover Street Bridge project, and advancing transit-oriented development at Reisterstown Plaza, Rogers Avenue, and State Center. We're also supporting several safe routes to school projects to improve bicyclist and pedestrian safety, and are advancing the Francis Scott Key Bridge rebuild by starting demolition of the remaining structure. The draft CTP does keep highway user revenue funding at the current level through fiscal year 2027, but I do want to acknowledge remarks that have been made by some of our speakers so far this morning, and know that it is, it is very much on our radar where we are with highway user revenues, not just for the city, but for all jurisdictions across the state, and we will remain an active participant in all conversations about highway user revenues going forward. Before I close out, I do just also want to acknowledge, thank you for the feedback on the Be More Bus plan. I think it is a good sign that it is a plan that we see support in. There are elements of the plan that we have alignment. It's a plan everyone is excited about. And so while we do not currently have full funding for that plan in there, I think it is encouraging to me to know that the work that Holly's team did, the feedback that came from so many stakeholders, has developed a plan that people are excited about and want to see put into action. I think that that is something to celebrate, and we will continue to be partners in advancing that plan forward. But I will now turn it over to our modal team to talk through updates respective to their modes. Holly?
All right, good morning, everyone. For the record, I'm Holly Arnold, Administrator at the Maryland Transit Administration. I appreciate being at all of the CTP meetings, but especially here in my home city and seeing so many of you, including several of my representatives and my city council representatives, so thank you for being here. Diving into the CTP, so obviously the prioritization of transit in the Moore-Miller administration's budget really helps us to get transit back on track here in Baltimore City and the Baltimore region. This year's draft enables MTA to make some needed investments to preserve and strengthen our system. I'm going to go through a few highlights by mode, starting with Metro. Our new Metro subway cars are undergoing final system integration testing, and we're looking forward to having the first car in revenue service by the end of the year and hoping to celebrate with many of you for that milestone. These new cars are really a game changer. They're going to provide riders with a smoother, more comfortable ride, improve reliability, and enhancing the overall efficiency of our transit system. As the Secretary mentioned, the draft CTP also supports funding for our light rail modernization program. This is a $1.4 billion project to replace our current light rail fleet with modern vehicles and upgrade station systems and maintenance facilities. And I really want to not undersell that. It sounds like it's a state-of-the-art repair project. This is the first major investment that we have done in light rail since it was built 30 years ago. It really is a huge opportunity for us to partner and invest in the system, and I want to thank the city for their partnership on that already. On our core bus and paratransit systems, we continue to invest in vehicle replacements to ensure that we have a reliable system. On the MARC side, the draft CTP dedicates resources for the design of enhancement projects, including the Penn Camden connector just south of Baltimore. These projects will improve our system reliability and flexibility and position us for future expansion opportunities on the MARC system. Beyond just our infrastructure, we are serious about safety, and we continue to prioritize investments to support a safe, secure, and resilient transit network. We recently launched our Rules of the Ride. It's a code of conduct that sets clear expectations about what is acceptable behavior when using our system. This effort helps to clarify and helps to protect our riders and employees, especially our operators, and reinforce our commitment to a safe and comfortable ride for everyone. Effective October 1st, riders who violate the code's bannable offenses will face permanent or temporary suspension from the system, and that is thanks to support from the General Assembly, allowing us to make that happen. MTA is also proud to support Baltimore City's local transit operations, including the Tri-City Circulator, with nearly $5.3 million this fiscal year. Before I turn it over to Bruce at MDTA, I did want to address, since I received texts and emails from several of you, two things that are impacting MTA service right now. First is a cybersecurity incident that happened about 3 weeks ago. We are continuing to partner with DoIT to investigate that, and I can't share a lot there, but on the operations side, I did want to share that the team knows the impacts, is fully focused on doing our best to make sure that we can fully recover from this. Paratransit was the most impacted, and I want to shout out to the team for the huge amount of work that they've done over the past 3 weeks to get the call center back up and running. Our wait times are now returning to normal. We just went to normal call center hours this past Friday, so we are kind of restoring some normalcy. We do know that restoring the web page is critical because a lot of our riders do need to use that to book, and so that is our next step and focus there. On the core system, real-time availability is impacted. Our team is continuing to work, day and night to try and improve that. I will say it's hit or miss. This morning, my buses were not tracking. I encourage everyone to use the Go app or the Go feature on Transit app to kind of help their fellow riders with that. But we are committed to, restoring service to where we were. The other impact is the Howard Street fire that happened about 2 weeks ago, and I want to thank the city for their partnership on that, especially Chief Administrative Officer Leach. Maintaining that corridor and getting our light rail service back up and running is critical. It is impacting the rest of our system because we have to pull buses from other routes to run the shuttle, but in partnership with the city, it looks like they should be on track to hopefully finish within the next week, and we can be back up and running and have service for the next Ravens game and for all of the other things that people need to take light rail for. All right, so that's all I've got. Thanks for listening. Next up, I'm going to turn it over to Bruce at the Maryland Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Holly. Good morning. I'm Bruce Gardner, Executive Director of the Maryland Transportation Authority. Just want to start off by saying how much we appreciate the city's support as we continue making progress on the Key Bridge rebuild. The rebuild team has accomplished more in 1 year than most projects of this magnitude have in 5 years. We began a mechanical demolition of the structures of the remaining bridge earlier this summer, and we also have reached the 50% mark on the design of the new bridge. Still, there is more work to come. This is a once-in-a-lifetime project, and it has been generating national interest. The test pile is expected to begin in the next month. This will clear the path for construction of the new bridge. As we advance the bridge design, MDTA will be updating the estimated project cost and schedule. We have heard your concerns about traffic. We know it's very significant going through the tunnels. As a daily user of the tunnels myself, it has been a big impact on the region. We see that every day. We have been making improvements where we can in this difficult situation. For those of you that have been traveling on I-95, you may have noticed some new pavement markings going down on 95. This is to help with those merge points onto 395 and 95 to be very clear about which lanes are proceeding to those major arteries. We've also moved, we're about to move the toll collection points on 895, so the toll collections that are happening right in the toll booths on 895, the last remaining toll booths on our system, will be moving to gantries, most significantly north of the 895 tunnel, and then over onto the ramps for Child Street and the other ramps. So that is just a piece of a multi-phase project to improve 895 in the long term. Unfortunately, the major improvements to happen in that area will need to wait until the completion of the Key Bridge so that we don't impact that corridor any further. So thank you for your time, and I'm going to now hand it over to Will Pines of the State Highway Administration, and I will exit stage right.
Well, thank you, Bruce, and good morning, everyone. I'm Will Pines, Maryland State Highway Administrator, and I also want to take a moment to thank Director Macbeth for our partnership on local programs with the city. She's very responsive and collaborative in working together. Additionally, I'd like to echo the Secretary's emphasis on safety. We are serious about the safety of all roadway users, as it is our top priority. And our partnership on safety-focused projects with Baltimore City DOT has been a highlight. We're working on the MOU and procurement for the Jones Falls Gateway Trail project on the south side of Falls Road, as well as the Middle Branch segment of the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network connecting Gwynns Falls Trail to the Inner Harbor Promenade. Our Safe Routes to School efforts include $177,000 in design safety features for Cecil Elementary and $973,000 for safety improvements at Hilton Elementary, Tench, Tillman Elementary and Middle, Westport Academy, and Pimlico Elementary and Middle Schools. We're also pleased reconstruction is underway on the Inner Harbor crosswalks and bicycle wayfinding, fueled by a Transportation Alternatives Program grant. And we're happy to announce that the city is receiving a $160,000 Kim Lanphier Bikeways grant to aid design of the Remington Avenue bike path between University Drive and the 28th Street cycle track. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Chrissy Nizer at the MVA, and we'll take questions at the end.
Thank you, Will, and good morning, everyone. As Will said, Chrissy and I is our MBA administrator. I'm proud to report that our Baltimore City branch office has experienced 2 years in a row of a 5-minute wait time, and that is truly reflective of the wonderful employees we have at the MBA who not only prioritize efficiency, but also accessibility and service for all Marylanders. We continue to encourage customers to sign up for their My MBA account. You can take advantage of more than 60 different transactions online, but if you need to come to a branch office, we're also committed to have a one-stop shop experience, and thanks to our partners in the legislature, we now have the ability to print both death certificates as well as birth certificates to truly make that a one-stop shop experience. You don't have to leave and return. Customers can also now see real-time data. We have a dashboard online to allow customers to see not only branch wait time, but other critical information like electric vehicle information and other things we know are important to our customers. As part of our ongoing outreach, we partner with the Food Project in West Baltimore to provide permit testing to over 120 people on a monthly basis. And we also offer on-site learners permit tests at city schools, youth groups, and that includes YouthWorks and the Department of Juvenile Services locations. The MBA and our partners also remain committed to developing solutions to save lives on our roadways, as we're all committed to reaching that goal of 0 fatalities. Last year, we lost 67 people in Baltimore City, and we know that that represents real people and impacting communities throughout the city. While we thankfully are seeing a decrease in fatalities statewide this year, we know that there's still more work to be done. And as part of that effort on the behavioral side of the house, MBA recently awarded highway safety grants that include $12,000 to the Baltimore City Police Department, that's for overtime enforcement, as well as $40,000 to Bike More. This funding helps address distracted, impaired, aggressive driving, as well as pedestrian and bicycle safety. So thank you for your time, and next up, we'll hear from the Maryland Aviation Administration.
Good morning. My name is Shanetta Griffin. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Maryland Aviation Administration. The Maryland Aviation Administration plays a critical role in supporting travel, tourism, commerce, and jobs in Baltimore City. BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport serves as a major aviation resource and an engine for economic development. With an economic impact of $11.3 billion, BWI Marshall generates and sustains more than 107,000 jobs throughout the region. Looking ahead, BWI Marshall's AB Connector and Baggage Handling System project, which is the largest improvement project in the airport's history, will be completed this fiscal year. Then we turn much of our attention to capital projects to help modernize facilities, enhance safety and security, and improve the overall passenger experience. MAA also supports the state's public use airports that serve several local communities. Through our statewide aviation grants program, MAA intends to administer $135,000 for the Pier 7 heliport in Baltimore City to support the installation of a sophisticated automated weather observing system. Thank you all for your time, and now I'll turn it over to Bob Monroe with the Maryland Port Administration.
Good morning. My name is Robert Monroe. I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Maryland Port Administration. I am filling in today at the last minute for Jonathan Daniels, who is the Executive Director. Unfortunately, Jonathan had to deal with some unexpected health issues relating to his mother. I know he would want to be here with all of these important stakeholders, but unfortunately that can't be the case today. The Port of Baltimore remains strong. Our latest cargo volumes show a continued recovery following the 2024 year challenges. All of our targeted commodities, including autos, containers, farm and construction machinery, paper and break bulk, are up over last year's, and some of those cargoes, containers and cars, are up over our record 2023 year, which was prior to the collapse of the Key Bridge. To date, we have not seen large impacts due to tariffs. However, we continue to monitor them due to the complexity of the supply chain channel and the decisions being made by our stakeholders. Our cruises continue to sail at full capacity, and we're happy to be welcoming a larger Carnival cruise ship in 2027. CSX will reopen the Howard Street Tunnel later this month. The double stack capacity is completed in there. However, we still have some bridge work to do to make it fully functional. So later this month, the tunnel will be open for single stack trains, and we expect that the overall bridge work associated with the tunnel will be finished spring of 2026. The entire project is expected to increase business by roughly 160,000 containers and create about 13,000 jobs. We're also moving forward with our EPA Clean Ports Grant, which will procure more than 200 new zero-emissions vehicles, charging infrastructure and equipment. This will dramatically improve the air quality at the port and also help our underserved communities in dealing with some of these challenging issues. Now I will turn back to Acting Secretary Biddle. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Executive Director Monroe. Before closing out and turning it back over to our partners at the city, I did want to just thank one more time Director Macbeth and your team just for the tremendous partnership, communication coordination, and the accomplishment on your ADA ramp. That may not seem significant to every single person, but I'm sure if it is a ramp that is on a corner of the neighborhood where you live, and if you have a mobility challenge, then it is something that's well appreciated. As someone who has completed ADA assessments in my past life, working in the private sector, doing one for another state, you see those numbers of how many pieces of infrastructure need to be addressed, and it can be overwhelming. So your work in getting to that threshold is just really stupendous, and just wanted to acknowledge that effort and the combined efforts of the whole team. But with that, I will turn it back over and welcome any questions or feedback from those in the audience.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Biddle. So we have Q&A that's going to be facilitated. So I guess we have members of the public. We have, who else do we have? An elected official. So I think we should start with any questions from elected officials. And so we'll start with the state delegation and then move to the city council.
Good morning, all. I'm Delegate Melissa Wells, represent the 40th District, but I'm also the chair of the Baltimore City House delegation. Acting Secretary Biddle, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you to your team as always. CAO Leach, as well as Director Macbeth, great to see you both, and thank you so much for all that you do for the city. I think I do want to begin by acknowledging, I think it's been a really great road that we've come as a delegation in terms of how we show up to the CTP. This is my second term, and I see a very stark difference in even the presence of the people in this room. I think even the coordination of our delegation when it comes to reviewing the CTP and continuing to think about how we can partner with the state and also continue to partner with the city on improving transportation in the city. And there has been a lot of progress. This past session, we had a robust session where we were able to secure a lot of the funds that weren't in the initial draft CTP, and our colleagues, along with the state, along with the city, really fought hard to make sure that we could get those resources specifically for the light rail modernization. And so I cannot express enough how glad and grateful we are for that partnership, and I think that it shows the support, it shows that our state does prioritize Baltimore. But there are, I think, more steps that we have to continue to take to make Baltimore whole and to really make this Baltimore's renaissance. And so I think, as we know, we are in the midst of a renaissance. And for the first time in the decade, we're seeing that our population is growing, which is a forecast that we weren't expecting, but it's a beautiful outlook. We're making historic investments to reduce vacancy and blight. The state is making significant investments in blight reduction. And we're repairing the harm and disinvestment to our communities, especially our legacy communities here in Baltimore City. We have gotten national attention for our crime rate, seeing the reduction in crime, and really just making sure that we continue to improve upon that. And in doing so, I can't help but think how that is contributing to some of the attractability of the city for folks to stay in the city, as well as bringing in more people into the city. And then we have to also talk about our children and their education and the historic investments that have been made with the blueprint for Maryland's future. We are already seeing some great progress in terms of those investments themselves. We're also seeing increased enrollment in our schools, right? And so I think that one of the things that we want to also be mindful of is what is missing, right? And mobility still is a challenge in many cases. Light rail is great, and I think that we will see a lot of those changes being made through the light rail modernization, but the bus system is still the backbone, as has been stated already. The mayor stated that, others have stated that in their comments. And so for that reason, the Be More Bus Plan, we really want to make sure that we do see some investments, some dollars going towards the implementation of the Be More Bus Plan. That's going to really help grow and integrate our transit system and allow for our young people who rely on the buses, who rely on public transit to get to school, allow them to get to school on time, to also access the core programs that are offered as a result of the blueprint, which are oftentimes not on site at the schools that they attend. They have to use transit to get there. And so we really want to make sure that even when we look at the renewal of our communities, and that it's not just the brick and mortar aspect, but it's the ability for folks to access through transit and mobility to be able to access jobs, get to grocery stores, and access healthcare and all the really vital necessary resources that they need. And so with that, I want to really express how it is our hope that the final draft CTP will include funding for the Be More Bus Plan. I think in the plan itself, you state the tremendous economic contribution that it will make to Baltimore City and to the state. And you also really highlight how vital those services are to moving Baltimoreans. So I think that it only, it further proves the need for there to be some investment in this final CTP. I also can't leave the podium without stating that I know that we are facing some very strong headwinds from the federal government, and that we are on our second go-around with the red line. However, we, as a state, we have to find a way to fund the red line and find a plan that will help us make that happen. We know that east-west connectivity is so vital, and so we must find a way to fund it. We are committed to working with the state, to working with the city as a state delegation to figure out how we can make that a reality. We have made hard things a possibility and a reality, so I have confidence that we can make the red line a reality. And so I thank you all for your support for Baltimore City. I thank you for your continued partnership, and looking forward to seeing many of the suggestions that you're going to hear, as well as what I just raised, seeing those suggestions included in the final draft CTP. So thank you very much.
While Delegate Smith is coming up, I would just say thank you so much, Delegate Walz, for your comments. I think it's so essential, the connections that you made between transportation, health, and housing. It's not just, we can't find success if we are just always operating within our own silo, and that's certainly the approach that we tried to take, working with the multiple aspects of both city government as well as state government, because I think we can do hard things together. Do you just want to emphasize for the record, from the perspective of funding for the Be More Bus Plan, I think it's important to note that we do have a down payment in the draft CTP. It is not certainly at the level that is going to get us the full plan, but do want to acknowledge funding for the right-of-way real estate purchase for the 5th Bus Division, something that Administrator Arnold's team is actively pursuing right now. So just knowing that we will continue to make every opportunity, or take every opportunity we can to make advancements there, as well as with the red line. I agree that together we can do hard things. So thank you again.
Good morning, Madam Secretary. I don't know, I'm pretty tall up here. And also, thank you both for responding to me as recently as last evening. I want everyone to know you're on the job, even on the weekends. I want to say thank you to the Scott administration and everyone assembled, because we know both the Scott and Moore administrations together are very committed to a stronger Baltimore City. So I know everyone's here wants the right things, but one of the good news pieces I want to share with everyone is that it's just a draft. It's not final. That means we have an opportunity to make changes as we see fit. Just for the record, I'm Delegate Stephanie Smith. I proudly represent the 45th District in East Baltimore, Northeast Baltimore City, and I traverse Biddle Street regularly. I don't know if there's any relation there, but I do want to say that as I serve on appropriations, I chair education and economic development, and we know that transportation is key to being able to access both of those sectors in a robust fashion. And so I do want to kind of piggyback on Madam Chair's remarks about we've made historic state investments in education, and we want to ensure that our students are able to adequately access those investments because we've already put that money in. But I also want to mention another investment that is all too familiar to everyone here as well, which is the Baltimore Vacants Reduction Initiative, which we've secured $50 million annually just from the state to help reduce blight and vacancy across the city. And as we know, having these communities, not just homes, transformed into more livable and safe spaces, it should be paired with the ability for people to open the door, go to work, go to school, and do all the things they need to do to live a robust life. So I want to add, in addition to the education investments, those investments we're making in reducing vacant housing are another testament to the state's commitment, not only to Baltimore, but to making our city more livable. And so that's why we think it's really important. We appreciate the down payment on Be More Bus, but we want to see continued growth in our support of that program because in many ways, the reliability of transit expands the types of folks who are willing to use transit. And I think a lot of people around the table are aware of that. The more reliable it is, the more frequent it is, the more you see all types of people not only relying on it, but choosing to rely on it. And so that is something that I think is necessary as we've seen modest population growth and also are seeing growth in our city schools population. I just want to kind of double down on that framing. I will remind everyone here, it's okay to be redundant. We want you to know that we all care about this deeply from every nook and cranny of the city. But also I want to say that we're not unfamiliar, particularly on the Appropriations Committee, about tough decisions. There are things that sometimes you can't support that are worthwhile and are important, so we do understand that. But we want you to know that you have a partner in the city and in the city delegation and making sure that those hard decisions don't always leave our most vulnerable on the other side of those hard decisions. And so I thank you so much for the time you spent here. And so in summary, house, transit, job, healthcare, school, and then, last but not least, I definitely think that we are at a turning point. If we do not continue to build upon our infrastructure, other states and communities are going to leave Baltimore and Maryland behind. And so, red line. Now, and even if we don't have the partnership of the federal government, there is a version of the red line that we can do as a state, so do not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Thank you for your time, your commitment.
Good morning. Can we set the record straight? Is it bitter or vital?
For the record, it's Biddle.
Thank you, Jesus. Okay. That was killing me. I heard 3 different versions all day. Well, good morning, Secretary Vital. Biddle. Shit. I haven't read it phonetically here with the I. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Madam CAO. Director Macbeth, and it's such a pleasure seeing you up here. We go back, and so it's always an awesome time to see you guys here. But first of all, thank you, and I want to say thank you for the work that you've already done on behalf of not only statewide CPP, but essentially for Baltimore City. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for having Baltimore as the first stop on the CTP tour so that Baltimore can kick off the tour with the big CTP energy. Public transportation is critically important for all of our users, but public transportation is vital for our school-age students. We know that attending school regularly and timely strengthens participation and activity and impacts students' readiness. When the bus is timely, the former can be achieved. Public transportation supports independence and freedom and allows students to build social skills with other students and the broader community, things that they do now as constant riders. The beauty of Baltimore is that our students have school choice, and the opportunity to choose places our students at every major bus stop across the city to get to their chosen corner of the city 5 days a week. One of those large intersections lives in District 43A, Green Mountain 33rd. We know at times getting across the city is hard, to get to because of school choice, but it's challenging, it's frustrating, and cuts down on the ability to attend school regularly and on time, challenging their school readiness. My colleagues and I are ever so proud of the investments we have made for our students through the 21st Century School Buildings Program and the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, but we are pushing for the linchpin of these investments, the Be More Bus Plan and the Red Line. Without either of these investments, the investments made of our students, our city will be in vain. The city delegation is requesting the governor and MDOT to work with us and partner to prioritize and locate funding for both plans. Without the funding and implementation of both transportation plans, our students will be left on corners, late for school, and the investments we have made on their behalf will fall short. It will be in vain, leaving Baltimore, most importantly, our children behind. And if I can just insert a little story here. Back in the day when I lived in the county on a major intersection at Security Boulevard and Roland Road, I had to take the bus to get to Towson University. As someone who comes from the Montgomery County area, you make the phone call, how do I get around, how do I get to this place? And so my route was, I had to wake up at 6:30 in the morning, leave my house by 7:15 on the dot to walk a mile out of my community to get to the major intersection, to get the M6, to get the 44, to get the 8 or the 11, to get to Towson by 9 o'clock. In 2025 versus 1996, 97, 98, that should not be the travel of our students, any of our students to date. And so our governor's tagline has been that for it to be Maryland's decade, it has to be Baltimore's time. Given the many efforts and collaborations of the city, state, and our federal government, the city is experiencing a historic decline in crime, an increase in students' test scores, attendance, and population, a reduction and continued reduction of vacant and blighted property, and the stabilization of our population. With all this movement, it is certainly time for a world-class transportation system worthy of a major East Coast city, worthy of students who need it, and worthy of a city who since 1960s has worked to do just that. It is now Baltimore's time, and if I did not say my name for the record, it is Regina T. Boyce, District 43A, proud Vice Chair of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So my name is Delegate Jackie T. Addison, and I proudly serve the 45th District, Northeast and East Baltimore. I wanted to come, all of my colleagues have spoken about, first of all, let me take a step back and say thank you all for being here today along with us. But my colleagues have spoke about student bus ride and all those things that honestly, I'm not prepared because I did not know I was speaking, but I am going to speak about House Bill 1144. I serve on the Environment and Transportation Committee, and that bill is very important. We did a bill that would not allow you to get on a bus and do any bodily harm. She spoke about the bill, and that bill goes into effect on October the 1st. We see it all around, the country where there are folks who get on the MTA, they get on the MARC train, Amtrak, and they are harmed by citizens. Also, our bus drivers and our Amtrak workers. And so we put that bill in so to prevent that from happening in the state of Maryland. Just wanted to say thank you, Holly, for helping. Yeah, thank you for us pushing this bill through, and that we pray that this bill will allow people not to be on public transit harming one another. I can speak about someone who was harmed in the 45th District, which is my district on Moravia, where we had a driver who was killed in the 45th District, right on Moravia at the apartments. And so I thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me about this bill that we have. So I'm gonna hand it over to my colleague to talk about public safety as well.
Thank you so much, Secretary Biddle, and Chief Administrator Leach, and Director Macbeth, and all of your teams. It's such a pleasure to see you all here. And I want to first say thank you on behalf of this delegation for what you did put in the CTP. I mean, when we consider the draft last year, this is light years ahead, and so we're really grateful for that. I'm here mostly just to add my voice to my delegation. I'm so proud to be part of this delegation that cares deeply about transit in Baltimore, our transportation investments, and just really grateful to be part of them and to be able to work with our city council team. I want to touch on two things. One is I serve with Delegate Boyce representing 43A. Our district is served by the buses. That's our form of public transportation. And I also, have some horror stories over the years of just watching full buses on the Red Link line just pass by one after the other at commute times. I really appreciate the investments made, both in last year and then this year's draft budget. But as has been said, we need to do better. You know that. You have a plan to do better. We want to see that funded more fully. We need it. I want to talk about economic development and public safety very briefly. We've made huge investments. These are priorities of the governor. They're priorities of the mayor. We are shooting ourselves in the foot by not having an adequate public transit system. People cannot get to work. They cannot, if they're coming out of prison, we do a lot of work in our delegation supporting reentry efforts. That's something that the state can do better. We are doing better. But if people can't get to their appointments, their probation appointments, their job appointments, their drug treatment, you name it, we are just making it so much more difficult. So I'm here to add my voice, here to be part of the team. Grateful you're here, and just want to say, please, we can do better. Appreciate what you've done, but we can do better. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Secretary, CAO Leach, Madam Director Macbeth. My name is Mark Edelson. I represent the 46th Legislative District in the House. I have the great honor of serving on the House Appropriations Committee with Delegate Smith and Delegate Ruff. As mentioned, we know how to make hard choices. We know that you had to make hard choices. You've had to make many hard choices. But let's just take a step back and say, oh, what a difference a few years makes, right? It wasn't that long ago we were having to consider cutting commuter bus. And here we are in meetings talking about fully funding the light rail modernization program. It wasn't that long ago we were having to talk about a potential BRFA because we weren't going to be able to hit state of good repair levels. And here we are seeing them at incredible levels for many years to come. And I want to mention MTA's great efforts at spending at a high level the allocation of state of good repair money. I also want to mention, we talk a lot about MTA in the city, as we should, but all of the modal agencies do an incredible job and make such an impact on life in the city and in the state. I feel like every time I hear from Director Nizer, wait times are lower at MVA. Every time I hear from our folks at SHA, Director Pines, we're talking about making our roads safer. The port is just an incredible economic engine for the city and the state of Maryland, frankly, the whole East Coast. All of our modal agencies make a difference. The folks at MDTA, as Director Gardner said, what has been done in a year in order to get us to that next bridge is what would be done in 5 years in other places. And so we often come to these meetings and say how much more we need to do, which is absolutely the case this time, but it's also important for us to stand here and say how much we have been able to do together. That is due in large part to the work that you all do. That's in large part to the work that the city and the state have done, but it's also incredible to see our advocates and stakeholders here today. This is like standing room only in this room, and at the end of the day, that is how we're able to do the work that we all do together. So I'd love for us to give a round of applause to all of the advocates and stakeholders here today. They live, eat, and breathe this work, and it makes all the difference in the world for us to be able to stand up here and advocate for them. So as we look at where we are right now with the draft CTP, you've heard three general messages, and I just want to sort of encapsulate those. The first is on highway user revenue. I recognize that it is an odd scenario for us to be standing here talking about highway user revenue because that is really statutory. But the case that we want to make to you all is that it does not have to be a zero-sum game. We can continue funding highway user revenue at the levels that they've been up until now and will be through FY27, and also fund state of good repair levels at the place that they are in the CTP and the light rail modernization program. As I said, 2 years ago, we were worried about cutting commuter bus. We didn't have to do that. A year ago, we were worried about catastrophic cuts to state of good repair, and look at where we are now. So what I would implore you to do is Let's think about how we can make both of these things happen together without it being a zero-sum game, because we know that we're at a decade and $1 billion of lost highway user revenue for the city, that Director Macbeth could talk for hours about how far behind we are on the roads that we have to maintain, but also, more importantly, how much work Baltimore City has done since highway user revenue levels were increased in 2018 and then again in 2023. That is what is so important, right? This is progress that we have made that we cannot afford to lose. The state investing in highway user revenue in the city is a good investment of taxpayer dollars. That is the case that I want to make to you. The second is on the outstanding Be More bus plan. You might not have expected to come here today and hear about that as much as you have, but I will tell you that I've had plenty of meetings with constituents of mine that don't usually bring up conversations around transit that say to me, wow, that Be More bus plan is pretty cool. How can we make it happen? And you can see how many folks are sitting in this room today in support of that plan. It is not an insignificant investment, we know, but it is the kind of thing that can separate Baltimore City and set this region apart as to the way that we move people around. And it is a critical investment for us, and we look forward to working with you to make it happen. And finally, actually, just on the Be More Plus plan, I want to say, it is also so important, so many folks in the city delegation have raised this point, because it is so critical to our students. They are a voice that is not in this room right now by themselves because they're in school, but it's a voice that we have to lift up because they are our future. And in order to help them get to school on time and be able to choose the school that will help them achieve their utmost educational potential, to me is one of the priority things that we as elected officials and state representatives must do. So in order to ensure that we are listening to their voices who are crying out for a more efficient, reliable, high-functioning way to get to school, we've got to find a way to fund this plan. And finally, the reality is that we all need to be standing here pounding our fists on the desk saying, we have got to build the red line. We've got to build the red line. We know that this is a situation in which we're not going to get the kind of support from the federal government that we were hoping. But to me, that is why it's a time for us to stand up and say, we will find a way to do it without it. There are ways to do that. I think that we have to converge around the way to do it and to frankly show that we don't have to be so reliant on the federal government for everything that we want to do. Yes, they are an incredible investor in the city and the state and in the entire region, but there are times when we're just going to have to go it alone, and this might be one of those times, and we have to show the people of Baltimore and the region that we can make this happen. And so I implore you, let's find a way to build the red line once and for all. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for all that you do. This is a great CTP meeting. Thank you.
Ditto. Good morning, everyone. I'm Delegate Malcolm P. Ruff, District 41 in northwest and west outer half of West Baltimore City, and wanted to absolutely say ditto to not only my great colleague on appropriations, Delegate Edelson, but also to all of my colleagues in our state delegation. All of the priorities that we've brought up absolutely need to be top priorities that we will partner on. And I do want to just offer my thanks because I think last year when I was standing here, I was in a much different position of saying, yeah, I know, Holly. I was saying things like, you must reverse course and you must restore many, many more dollars to this plan. And like my other great colleague on appropriations said, we saw that and we felt seen and heard, and I'm glad that this partnership took the right path last year. So I'm not coming with as much doom and gloom, but I do want to obviously, again, echo everything that all of my colleagues have said. This is a critical time for us to be able to make the investments now so that today us are taken care of, tomorrow us, right now. I just want to harp on the state of good repair piece and say that we heard that last year. You guys heard us loud and clear, but unfortunately it looks like the funding is at a lower level, just a slightly lower level than as of last year for state of good repair, and I think it's to the tune of about $6 million. We want to go in the other direction, right? We have a lot of deferred maintenance on our books to a large number, right? And I talked about last year, on the west side, not only do we have bus service, but luckily we have also subway service, the train service, which, there are issues with people getting up and down the elevators and the escalators. And of course, personnel is another issue. But I am imploring that we make sure that we try to make sure that we're going in a different direction, right? More funding to the state of good repair, because we know that the dollars that we spend in transit, right, are going to be expounded in economic development probably 5 to 6-fold. And that's exactly what our constituents need right now is the investment today. And so I thank you all so very much for this draft. I hope that we can find a way to increase the funding to state of good repair. I did have one question for you, Director Pines, and it is related to the audit of the federal projects, and wanted to get your response about how that could affect the CTP and how it could affect our budgeting going forward with all of the requests that we're making about the Be More Bus Plan and for the Red Line. I'm kicking stuff. But also just to make sure that we are aware of how we need to be facing this situation and how we can support you moving forward to make sure that we're fully funding the things that we need.
I do want to come back on state of repair, but can defer to Administrator Pines, on an update
Sure.
there and how it may impact the CTP. But just I want to thank you for kind of raising both issues. I think are both equally important. So.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for the question. We do want to thank the auditors for their work. This has been an issue for State Highway that started back following the pandemic. And essentially, at that time when revenues were declining, inflation pressures are there, we strategically made the decision to leverage more federal funds as much as possible, frankly. Most of you would think using federal money is a good thing, right? But certainly from the state's perspective, it has amplified, especially coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act, the IIJA bills. There are a lot of federal actions that are required for every federal dollar we receive. And so in our strategy to pursue federal funding, the volume of transactions still has grown and requires a lot of continued processing by us in order to have receipts on those transactions back from the federal government. We appreciate that the audit report was clear that the transactions may be receivable, right? And so we are actively working with our federal partners to receive this funding. We are behind on that. And unfortunately, State Highway wasn't tooled with people, systems, software when the pandemic hit to be able to handle the volume that we're processing now. So it is a significant issue. The way I like to sort of frame this, one of the questions around accounting, right? If you think about a normal business, if you have a good customer, you can have accounts receivable. You go out and do work and you wait for them to pay you. The same is the case with the federal government, right? We have a balance of account receivables where we've went out and done work and now need to process the paperwork to receive the funds back from them. We do not yet have a clear, exact number on how much we'll get back, but the way that our process works, there is what's called advanced construction in the Code of Federal Regulations. That allows us to fund projects up front, wait for the federal money to be available to obligate against that, and only 7 steps down into the federal process are we allowed to get reimbursed. So we're clearing those steps. That has to happen on a project-by-project basis. It is not this wide sweeping big bucket of dollars sitting somewhere for a whole program. It's individually based, and so we have to work through literally thousands, hundreds of projects to clear those transactions individually. So I don't have an exact magnitude because we're working through the list, and we have taken a number of steps to make improvements to deal with this as we worked with the auditors over many months. And again, appreciate their work. They were helpful in identifying some great recommendations on reporting and SOPs and things that we think will be helpful for us as we move through this.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pines. Another area where I do want to give Administrator Arnold the opportunity to respond on state of good repair, because I think having the money programmed is one thing, and then spending it and turning it into the projects that improve our system is another. And I do want to acknowledge Administrator Arnold's team fully in taking the time and to doing what needed to happen behind the scenes in terms of internal processes with procurement, with staffing, with training, to make sure that we have a pipeline that is ready to go, so that it is not just money programmed, it is money that will be spent and turned into real projects.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary Biddle, and thank you, Delegate. I was laughing because, last year we were sitting here not sure where we were going to be with light rail, and we sit here today with that fully funded and advertised. It got advertised last Friday for the vehicle and train control, and so, again, a huge kudos to the team. We're trying to prove that if you give us money, we will spend said money and deliver on said projects to make things better for our riders, and so that has really been the focus, and I want to give Kate Sylvester and her team a ton of kudos for the work that they've done to build up our team and build up our capacity to spend. We did spend 97% of our funding this past year. We did publish the capital needs inventory back in July, which shows that for the 6 years of the CTP, the first 5 years, we are 90% funded in state of good repair. And the way that a lot of our projects work, our capital projects, is it's big bumps with major investments that are kind of like once every 30-year investments, and then it kind of goes back down. And so that's what we're seeing a lot of times, especially with the reduction this year, is the Metro project, our signaling and train car is almost done. We're getting close to finishing. We should have those vehicles in service later this year. And because of that, you're seeing a reduction in what we're putting into Metro. It's not that we're reducing what we're investing in, it's more just that that big major expenditure, right? You replace the roof once every 20 years. It's not a normal level got finished. Elevators and escalators are fully funded and are moving forward, and we're continuing to invest in the system. It's definitely something we're keeping our eye on and paying really close attention to. But thanks to the support of the Miller administration and Secretary Biddle, we are continuing to make progress in that area.
Well, that sounds great. I'm going to be jumping on the Cold Spring Station real soon so I can check your work.
We'll have you come celebrate when we get the new vehicles
I really
in.
appreciate you as always, and thank you guys for the time. Thank you for your effort. Thank you for investing in Baltimore City.
Good afternoon, or good morning, everyone. My name is Kayla Young. I'm State Delegate for the 45th Legislative District. I represent East and Northeast Baltimore City. Also giving a ditto to all of the good work and leadership, and thanking you all for the leadership that you've done. I defer a lot to my colleagues, especially folks like Vice Chair Boyce and Delegate Edelson, who you all work with on these issues, and to hear their remarks and how they've responded today is heartwarming for me and makes me feel really good about the direction we're going in. Just a few things I want to just highlight, and again, I don't pretend to be an expert in transportation or spending a ton of time on it, but a few things that I think are important, especially in my experience moving about Baltimore City. Administrator Arnold, we live in a similar neighborhood. You're not too far from me, and Councilman Dorsey has put the bike lanes all over Harford Road and Argonne Drive, as you know. But that being said, I want to just emphasize that micro mobility in today. Recently, my car was out of commission, so I found myself on a lot of Lime bikes and scooters over the last few weeks. And in my experience, while we have been doing a great job of building out that infrastructure, there's still a severe need. And I think I'm just going to highlight Delegate Lewis, who leads on that effort a lot, to just emphasize that we need to continue to make sure that those revenues are there, so that way we can build out that infrastructure. I heard a lot of good stuff also about the Be More Bus plan. The thing about that, though, that I want to emphasize, too, is the opportunity that we also have with the new technologies coming online And how can we leverage these buses? How can we leverage all of our infrastructure so that way we're informing our 311s on high grass and weeds, on potholes, on all of the things to keep our city clean and safe beyond just getting folks to where they got to go. But how can we make our city better? How can we help the city administrator have that data so that way her people can get those things accomplished? I know that in phase 2, I did see in phase 2, we're talking about an expansion of connected and autonomous vehicle infrastructure. I think that some of that is coming online a little bit faster than what the plan may currently have in its draft. So just encouraging you all to continue to push as quickly as possible on that. I think that's an opportunity to continue to bring down costs for our residents, while at the same time increasing mobility in ways that might be helpful, especially as we seek or struggle to seek funding for some of the bigger projects. And then lastly, talking about the smart signals program, and how can we make sure that all of our signals, all of our signals are out of date. I think some of the talking points that the council president's office passed to me talked about how almost, I think, 60% of our signals might be well beyond repair. But certainly we have an opportunity therefore to improve those, to upgrade those, so that way they're talking to each other, so that way they're moving people faster and better. So I thank y'all for taking the time to listen, and thank you once again for your leadership. Y'all have a blessed day.
Good morning, Ryan Dorsey, City Council District 3. How did Delegate Boyce put it? Big CTP energy, that's what I'm known for. First, I just want to acknowledge again how many people are here today. This is amazing. I'm so happy to see so many of my colleagues, and those of my colleagues who are really invested in making sure the state understands that Baltimore's leadership across the board understands the importance of transportation, transit, and the challenge of budgeting for it, and that it's important for you to hear from us. So thank you for being here to hear from us. I love the partnership vibes up here, and it's just great to have people here who I truly call friends, that it makes me feel like we are working truly in partnership. It's also great, as was mentioned by several others, to come here feeling so much better overall than we were last year. Last year, I was like, how am I gonna keep it cool? and this year, it's really we come from a baseline of saying, y'all heard us. You did great in the revised budget last year, and this year starting out is just so much better than what we started out with last year. I also want to reiterate the Department of Transportation's, the City DOT, and the administration's emphasis placed on deferred maintenance costs that we face as a city, how we carry costs disproportionate to other jurisdictions, and we carry costs that are just in no way carried by other jurisdictions. Again, things like maintenance of 83 and 295. That I think it's really important to emphasize that request from the city that the state take over maintenance of these immense cost burdens, so that when, again, the HUR discussion is a little bit misplaced here because it's a statutory matter, but I think it relates to how we're able to stretch those HUR dollars the farthest when we get them, so that we're not dumping them into highways that no other jurisdiction really needs to maintain similarly. And then again, I think the biggest thing that folks here are concerned with also is the Be More Bus plan. Acknowledge that setting aside money for the acquisition of real property for a 5th bus division is an important part of this investment, is an important part of this plan. But if it's the only thing that's funded in this 6-year plan out of a 10-year plan, then it really looks more like we're talking about Be More Bus not as a 10-year plan, but as a 16-year plan, that we're deferring really the commencement of that 10-year program to fund that. And that's really, that's too long a time. As we've heard, our kids can't wait 10 years to get to school. They can't wait 5 years to get to school. They're waiting an hour to get to school, and that's longer than they need to wait. 80% of all of MTA's service riders are on the core bus service. And the current plan, as has been mentioned already, does a great job at funding the light rail and state of good repair, but is an overall reduction, not just this year, but over the course of this 6-year plan, right? $6 million this year, $24 million over the course of this 6-year plan. We want to see that restored, but again, that's not enough. That doesn't get us the Be More Bus plan. And that's just, my dad's going to be 80 years old this year, or next year. He grew up in Baltimore. He came into this world at a time when Baltimore's thriving streetcar system was being dismantled. The headways that we run on Baltimore's transit today are nothing like the headways that we were running 80 years ago. They don't compare by any means. And the Be More Bus plan is, in a way, just a way of us getting back to the quality of service that we operated 80 years ago. The future of Baltimore depends on us simply restoring the past that Baltimore had. And so I'm happy, so thankful. We've been asking, what is it going to take to get us to that level of service for so long? And so I was very happy to see the plan introduced, and I'm very thankful to have Mayor Scott issuing this supplemental letter to state unequivocally the city's priority to see the Be More Bus plan funded, but it just can't wait. The last thing I'll say is the thing that I had to really temper myself over the most last year is something that I still see present this year, and so I have to stress this, is that we are significantly funding above our obligation to the Washington, D.C. transit system and failing to fund Baltimore's needed bus investments, cutting year over year the investments that were shown as planned last year, while again substantially funding beyond what we are obligated to Washington, D.C. Governor Moore has been steadfast on the need for housing improvement and housing opportunity to grow in the state. Most recently announcing that there will be priority consideration for housing project funding for those local jurisdictions that are independently at the local level making headway in getting outdated laws out of the way. My committee, the Land Use and Transportation Committee, and this City Council are taking up a suite of bills right now that will, I hope, put us at the front of the line of local jurisdictions that are paving the way to reap the benefits of priority funding for housing. But housing alone does not a community make, right? Livability is rooted in where we live, where we work, and how we get between the two. And the transportation funding that we need in Baltimore is what I think of when, in order for this to be Maryland's decade, it has to be Baltimore's time. It's never, in order for this to be Maryland's decade, it has to be DC's time. We need to fund at and above the level that is required for Baltimore Transit, not just to sustain, but to thrive and grow. And we can't come at the expense of DC funding. Thank you.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. I also echo and give greetings, Secretary Biddle and the whole panel, and also our state delegation. I, Sharon Green Middleton, serve as Vice President of the Council, and also I'm starting my 5th term representing the 6th District, which is mostly part of the state's 41st district and part of the 40th district. First of all, I am so happy that you mentioned MACO as a former president of the Maryland Association of Counties representing the city. That organization is a very good advocate and representative, just helping to advocate for all of us as well. And also, basically, the main person on the executive board for the National Association of Counties, not just for Baltimore, but for the state, and also serve on the steering committee for transportation. And I have been doing that for the last 18 years. And but I'm here also making sure that you include and listen to the voices and advocates, particularly for our older adults, that, you know, safety is also very important for them. Our mayor continues to mention how we are the economic engine of the state, and also our council president continues to mention the strength that we need for our students, and also for my partner with older adults as we also work to create the Office of Older Adults for our city. Just here again to push, and I'm an advocate for the Be More bus plan and also the Red Line, and all of us here have just been emphasizing the importance of the continuity and safety of the city. And when all of you spoke, you talked about pieces, the port, you talked about our wonderful trails, the renovations and connections that we are having with Druid Hill Park, and how that was a separation for many, many years. But I also want to include all the investment that the state is partnering with Pimlico. And we need those connections for people to ride the bus to go to Pimlico. Pimlico is going to be open year-round, not just, you know, during Preakness. People are going to be coming from all over. And I'm really familiar with, you know, the light rail system at Wabash. We just built, in fact, I don't know if everyone knows this, but that was the first trans-oriented apartment building built right next to that Wabash and Cold Spring. West Cold Spring Lane is becoming extremely busy. There was a bridge that was connected, mostly federal funds, crossing Northern Parkway, and this is the connection with the Jones Falls Trail that was mentioned, which leads all the way to downtown. There needs to now also, I want to put this in your thought, that there needs to be a bridge crossing Cold Spring. It's just so imperative. I live in that neighborhood and have seen the growth of loads of bike groups going and stopping right there on the street. There has been accidents there. Maintenance is also very important. I'm still questioning CSX and how that partnership, and they still need to improve cleanliness and working with the city and state, and not just the trains and the rails, but they're going through neighborhoods, and they still need to show that they care about our neighborhoods. And I'll just kind of, I'll stop right there, but everything that all of us have said is just, this is how we're going to keep our city moving. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. And I would just say on the Jones Falls Phase 5, the crossing of Northern Parkway, I think when we were going through the implementation phase of that one, I used to oversee the Transportation Alternatives Program at State Highway. many moons ago, but to that point, it was many moons ago. So I think at that time, we did look at some options in partnership with the city for Cold Spring, and maybe our teams could reconnect to see, given the land use changes that you've pointed out and the changes in volumes there, maybe that's a new conversation that we need to reinitiate. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Please reach out.
Thank you. So sorry. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Secretary Biddle. Like many of us here, we're trying to build a relationship to make sure that Baltimore grows, thrives through the state of Maryland. Me, myself, I live on East Biddle Street. I have a lot of primary streets that, operate on bus routes off the secondary of Biddle Street. So I just want to make sure that we make sure that the neighborhoods and the folks around us are able to maintain safe operations of our buses. But the Be More Bus Plan is really, really crucial to us. As my colleague mentioned early on, Ron Dorsey, like 80% of MTA riders depend on the bus services each and every single day. Students, families, things of that nature. I know for sure this summer we had 24 youth workers working inside my office. Many have mentioned the safety around those buses. Many were saying how they would bring weapons on the bus, not to take into the schools, but just to provide safety for themselves on the buses. And some of those weapons are stashed outside of the schools before they leave the destination to come back home. That is very, very important to us. But as some of my colleagues mentioned early on, how we want to make sure that we're pushing the rail line. I mean, this is how we get Baltimore workers to the outside counties to make sure that, again, like the mayor mentioned early on, Baltimore is the engine that makes sure that Maryland moves forward. To pass and to echo the sentiments of my colleague Ron Dorsey early on when he was saying about, the D.C. metropolitan area, we want to make sure that Baltimore is the priority. Many times, and even to the day, our governor will continue to push over and over again that we're not going to leave anyone behind, right? And we mentioned this last time we were here as well. If we don't fund, our system and in Baltimore City, we will be leaving individuals behind. So let's stick to what our governor, spoke about. He continued to speak on that. And again, that's leaving no one behind. So I ask that you make sure to take consideration and giving Baltimore what it needs. Our delegation is here, our city council is here, our constituents are here, stakeholders are here, and we're really serious about making sure that this plan, Be One Bus Plan, is working and is for the residents of our city. So again, please take into consideration Secretary Biddle. Again, I'm Councilman Antonio Glover, who lives on Biddle Street, and just want to make sure that our secretary, primary streets are operated. Thank you so much. All right.
Good morning, Secretary Biddle. Good morning, guests. I'm Councilman Jermaine Jones of District 12. I represent the other portion of East Baltimore, the other portion of Biddle Street. So I felt inclined to come after my colleague, Councilman Glover. Just wanted to quickly bring up 3 quick points and try not to repeat what's already been said, but bring the conversation locally of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing in my district. The first thing I just want to talk about is safety. The top concern that I hear from residents within my district, often you would think is potholes and, the roads and hitting a pothole. Often for years you hear those issues, but no, now it's about traffic safety and how to slow traffic down in their neighborhood. That's the number 1 thing that I'm hearing. So when we're talking about investments, we aren't just talking about like luxuries. We're talking about people's lives, and it's a necessity. It's not a luxury anymore. Just for instance, I received a text message this weekend. Residents in my district, they invested in trackers to track the cars that's going down the road and the speed that the cars are going in, so we can get data and make informed decisions as a community on what's best for our neighborhood. And the information I received this weekend was that at the corner of Preston and Greenmount, in a 24-hour period, the average speed for 6 hours for a car is over 50 miles an hour. It's 50 miles, and that's data. That's public data that you can see and you can find. These are the concerns my residents have. These are the things that they're trying to slow down. When we're talking about investing in roads and infrastructure, these are the things we're looking to address. And that can't get put off till next year or 2 years or 3 years from now. It needs to get addressed now and immediately. Unfortunately, even a few months ago, I lost a resident in my district who was a biker and an artist who was unfortunately struck by a vehicle and lost his life. Every day we defer these investments have real impacts on family and residents of Baltimore. So I just want to echo again, it's a matter of public safety. To the point in which, bike lanes are really hot topic in my district. Some people love them, some people are against them. But after I have a conversation with my residents about how a bike lane will create congestion and slow down vehicle traffic in your neighborhood, it's amazing how many people who are adamantly against it will then be, a little more open and actually happy to see that bike lane once they find out that the average speed of the cars going down their neighborhood where they live and where they're raising their children will be slowed down. So with that said, next thing I want to talk about is the Be More bus, mass transit. I have a bike lane being installed on Washington Street from St. Louis Drive to Alisana, and it's about 2.3 miles. This is a heavily trafficked road, especially on rush hour. It's two lanes right now, but once it gets installed, it's going down to one. There is great concerns from the residents of how that congestion will be handled and how it will really impact traffic going down to one lane. It will be fine and everything will be great as long as we provide an additional option for folks, which is bus and mass transit. I think going down to one lane will be perfectly fine. But if we continue to make these type of investments without also making the investment in mass transit, we will then just have a bunch of cars on the road because people feel like the only way to get back and forth is by getting in the car. And now that we're investing in other options, we also have to make sure we invest in mass transit so that the system actually works. Because I remember growing up, you would think you would only take the bus if you absolutely had to, because there was no way of getting to one end of the town to the next. But those days are long gone, and we need to get away from that. We need to make our investments in the mass transit system so that it's not only something you ride because you have to, it's something that you ride because you want to, and you look forward to it. And unfortunately, fortunately, we're in a completely different situation than our other counties, our friends in our other counties. We need mass transit investment. People come to Baltimore and live in Baltimore, not so they have to own a car. Where in other counties, people look at it realistic. Like, it's a realistic expectation that you may own a vehicle. But some people love Baltimore because they don't want to own a vehicle. They want to be able to walk and catch a bus and meet their neighbors. And we have to make the investments in mass transit so this can be a reality. And lastly, economic development and jobs. I just want to say, I understand there's going to be tough decisions being made, but if there's one smart investment to make, it's in our mass transit system because it's such a force multiplier. Not only are we investing in our infrastructure, not only are we improving housing conditions in neighborhoods, but investing in our transportation system, we're also providing jobs and job opportunities for folks. We have two massive economic development projects going on with Amtrak and with CSX. And the amount of jobs that it's providing is amazing. And the amount of job training coming into new people I watch that's entering in construction, it's having impacts on family, children, and so forth. And we want to continue to see that type of investment and that type of economic mobility moving forward in Baltimore. And as we invest in Baltimore and our transit system and everything else, those are the type of improvements that we see, and that's the type of impact that exists and I see every day in my district. So I just want to thank you for coming and allowing us to be the first stop and hearing from us all, and I look forward to working with you to make sure we provide our residents with the type of mass transit and transit system they all deserve. Thank you.
And
morning.
one moment, and don't think that I'm doing this just because you happen to walk up at the same time. I'm doing a chime check. We're at 11:46, and I want to be respectful of the secretary's time. So if we can manage our time to try to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes because we also do want to hear from our stakeholder groups that are here that would like to make comments as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, no problem. First, I want to acknowledge this great woman power here up front. This is exciting, especially in a field that's usually so male-dominated. So thank you for being great leaders. My name is Odette Ramos. I am City Councilwoman for the 14th District in Baltimore City, which is north central Baltimore. I want to emphasize a couple of things. One is obviously the Be More Bus Plan, very important. I have a constituent, she's not my constituent unless she's at the school that she's in. So she lives in Cherry Hill, so that's Councilwoman Porter's district, and she takes several buses to get to City College. Well, now it's less because cities. But, my point is that, we should make sure that our kids should be able to go to whatever school they want, no matter where they live. And that is also the case with people where they are living to get to whatever job that they want, especially since we are so invested now in making sure that our neighborhoods that have been traditionally disinvested are now going to be revitalized, and it's going to be exciting, and we need to make sure that all of those transit opportunities are there for them. I will be right there on advocating for the HUR, so just want to echo that for with my colleagues. And as my 43rd district delegation folks have said, 33rd and Greenmount Avenue, York Road corridor is the highest bus ridership in the entire state. So the fact that the north-south corridor plan has not been funded is a challenge. So it really impacts Greenmount Avenue. We like having everybody there. I think we can do with the plan that has been started, make sure that that is efficient and effective in getting people where they need to go, but also can stop and shop at our wonderful Waverly Main Street. And the last thing I'll say is this. Today is it starts Hispanic Heritage Month. And we always have to acknowledge, and I will always acknowledge in this space, the 6 men who died on the Key Bridge, who are Latino. And I want to make sure that this body is making sure that all of our workers are safe and that those investments and the cost that we're putting into all of our improvements also includes safety. That is number one in my book. So I'm asking to make sure that all of the improvements that we see in the budget, absolutely make sure that that safety is there. It is extremely, extremely important. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Secretary. And as what may come as a surprise to my East Baltimore colleagues, there are indeed 2 blocks of West Biddle Street. They're both in the 11th District. So I just want to say it's really an honor to meet you in person, and I thank you for your service. Governor Moore has a really ambitious housing package. He's probably he's one of the most pro-housing governors in this country. That is a huge asset. The work that some members of the City Council and the mayor has been leading on with creating more opportunities for housing in Baltimore City is more ambitious than the state's plan. So we are just as serious about creating more housing, and with that comes a very obvious chicken and egg situation, right, with transit. And I know everyone understands that well. So I just want, as the lead sponsor of the bill to repeal parking minimums in the city of Baltimore, I have spoken with, I've sent over 250 email responses to Baltimoreans who have asked questions to me about this. I've spoken with over 20 neighborhood associations about my bill. I've spoken at Planning Commission in a recent first reader for the bill. And so there is just trust that I've had a whole bunch of conversations, and the way this ties into the transit situation is that not the most common, but one of the most common things I hear is this question of, hey, how do we make the bus plan work so that this whole thing can kind of make more sense? I am fully on board with Be More Bus as the solution there, and obviously we've got to fund it. So I do have a question for Administrator Arnold about how much money do we need to advance design for the Be More Bus plan? And besides that, come back to that question in a sec, and I'll just also briefly say, one, red line funding in general. I think it's incredibly important that we can't let the occupant of the White House, who that person is, determine that, you know, we are going to just give up on figuring out creative solutions for funding. And I ask that, you know, everyone involved here be really ruthless in coming up with out-of-the-box ways to fund the Red Line. It's incredibly important for my district as well as for the city as a whole. And then lastly, I just want to briefly shout out the Port Administration for the sake of time. Something we can talk about later, but obviously the 11th District has, the work that y'all do is incredibly important to my district, to our neighborhoods, for our economy. So thank you for that, and looking forward to working more with y'all going forward. So, all right, thank you.
Just to answer your question, Councilman, so the overall Be More Bus Plan is a number of different pieces of it. The largest piece is funding the 5th Bus Division, which would unlock the ability to store more buses, to deploy more buses out of it. The cost for that, we're still in the kind of very early concept phases, but we estimate somewhere between $400 and $600 million. We think total design is probably around $40 million, but the reality is, you can get started sooner with lesser amounts. When we did the Eastern project, we spent about a little less than $10 million before we brought on our CMAR partner. That was a lesson learned. We may not want to bring on a CMAR partner without knowing we have construction funding, but we can, even like $10 million gets us started. And I did want to address the Red Line as well, and note that we do have $150 million funded for planning, project development of the project. The team is here today, hiding somewhere. We brought on a really fantastic senior project director to lead that work, and has been, we're committed to the project, committed to advancing it, and trying to find creative ways to get there. So just want to note that as well.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, MTA Administrator Arnold, for those notes right there. Mark Parker represents the 1st District in Southeast Baltimore, a part of the city where even before different reforms are being enacted, we've seen by far the most rapid growth in housing and population in this city, much of it predicated on transit investments that haven't yet occurred. It's galling, not to point fingers at anybody, but it's grating to go through communities that have really high density apartment complexes and see the right of way that was preserved for the Red Line and for Greenway Trail, neither of which we have. And so that disconnect, that chicken egg you talked about, that the chicken hatched a long time ago, right? And our transit investments haven't realized there, and for many reasons beyond the control of anybody sitting in front of me. So just to name that's where we are, but also to say that the urgency of those investments, both in bus, in Greenway and alternate transportation modes, and the Red Line remain critically important for the 1st District and for the city overall as we aim to continue to grow. The other thing I lift up, and some of this was mentioned before, is the importance of pedestrian safety, the investments made in pedestrian safety and speed humps and other aspects are critically important, especially in high density, row house driven, growing neighborhoods. The disconnect between the volume of cars we're trying to put through those communities and the number of people who want to and need to be out, both accessing transit, riding their bikes, using scooters and micromobility, and simply navigating their community has resulted in pretty dangerous situations and circumstances. And so we're grateful for our partners in the City Department of Transportation for their work with communities and with elected officials around the city to prioritize those investments, and for the way that the state is making that possible as well. I note that when public safety grants were available to community associations around our city a few years in recent fiscal years, not through transportation budgets, but in other parts of the state budget, many of those communities, when they said, how could we spend money flexibly in our communities to make our communities safer, some of that went to LPRs, some went to cameras. A ton of that money, the top priority for communities was, we need these intersections, these entry points to Patterson Park, these entry points to our schools and educational facilities, into Cannon Crossing. We need to prioritize. We need to spend our money on that. And so to simply then come back to both our city and our state officials around transportation funding and saying, like, that is a critical part of public safety, is making sure that people can navigate, and then the streets that we're sharing between different modes of transportation are serving the full needs of our communities. Thank you.
I think it's still the morning. Good morning, Director Biddle. I am Paris Gray, councilman of the 8th District, and also, I guess, the worst basketball player on the council. So, in Baltimore's 8th District, residents live with the daily impact of decades of underinvestment in infrastructure and transit. That's why maintaining highway user revenue funding and delivering on the red line are not just a matter of statutory process or abstract policy debates. They are urgent, tangible needs in my community. Corridors like Liberty Heights, Emerson Avenue, and Frederick Avenue are vital state roads that run directly through my district. They move thousands of people, buses, and commerce every single day, yet they are plagued with potholes, outdated signals, and sidewalks that are unsafe or non-compliant. After years of cuts, Baltimore lost nearly $1 billion in HUR funding. We cannot allow that to happen again. At a minimum, current funding levels must be protected and ideally strengthened. Deferred maintenance is another pressing issue, with nearly 60% of Baltimore traffic signals are beyond their service of life. Many are in my district. More than a third of the roads are in substandard corridor conditions, and on top of that, our ADA backlog makes it difficult for seniors, parents with strollers, and residents with disabilities to move safely in their own neighborhoods. These aren't just numbers. They represent a daily frustration for families that cannot get to school, to work, to a medical care facility, or for me, to basketball practice. Baltimore cannot tackle these challenges alone. Sustained state support is essential. And finally, I want to talk about the red line. My constituents along the Emerson Avenue corridor have waited for decades for a reliable east-west transit system. The red line is not just another project. It would be transformational for my area and for the city of Baltimore. But residents are understandably wary after years of stops and starts and broken promises. The project must be fully funded and delivered. Without it, West Baltimore will remain cut off from opportunities from long overdue remedies to the legacy of actual redlining, legacies rooted in neighborhoods like the Emerson Village area. If we're serious about equity, serious about economic growth, and serious about public safety, then we must invest in these corridors. We must safeguard HUR funding, and we must deliver on transit. West Baltimore cannot afford another delay. We need and welcome you as a partner to realizing our renaissance. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Councilman. And just, I know we have more speakers, and I'll be brief. Whoever is up next is welcome to come up to the podium. But just know that the Red Line is a project that I worked on when I first moved to Baltimore 20 years ago. And it's something that's very dear to me, to Administrator Arnold. And so hearing everyone's wide-ranging geographic support for that today is very encouraging. Don't want to dismiss your other comments as well. Those are very well taken. But just wanted you to know that it's personal.
I'll just jump up really quickly. So, good afternoon now, Councilman John Bluck. I know we all have to run, but it was very refreshing to hear you talk about the red line. I represent the 9th District, which is west and southwest Baltimore, and that highway to nowhere that many people are familiar with runs right through the heart of our district. And so we look at the West Baltimore MARC station as a hub for transportation, but also thinking about the opportunities that are going forward. So realizing that we need our state funding, because we can't necessarily rely on the federal government right now, is very key. Things like the Reconnecting Communities grant, which we were getting before, again, that's significant. There's been a lot of work done on the ground. I'm just happy to stand in lockstep with my colleagues who've talked about the importance of transportation for disinvested communities, particularly East and West Baltimore. But again, we appreciate you guys being out here today. Thank you so much.
Up next, we're going to head over to our stakeholders, and I just want to say thank you again to our elected officials for taking the time to sit here and then also comment. So the order that we're going to call community advocates, members, and elected officials. We will start with Jennifer Vey from Greater Baltimore Committee, then Roger Schulman from the Fund for Educational Excellence, Michael Huber for Johns Hopkins University, and then Eric Norton for Central Maryland Transportation Alliance. Folks, we are at a timeline where we're a little bit over, and we want to respect Secretary Biddle's time and her teams and everyone else's, so please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon. I think it is now officially afternoon. Thanks so much to all of you for being here. I'm Jennifer Vey. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer at the Greater Baltimore Committee, which is the leading voice for the private sector in the Baltimore region. I'm speaking today on behalf of both GBC and the Baltimore's Transit Future Coalition, which includes approximately 70 business, civic, and nonprofit organizations, including many of the largest employers in our state, around a campaign to support a strong regional transit system in Baltimore. BTF is a joint effort between GBC and the Greater Washington Partnership, which is a nonprofit alliance of leading employers in Maryland, Virginia, and DC that's committed to championing regional economic growth. I'm joined here today by Lauren Magnato. Give a wave if she's here. There she is, who is GWP's Director of Regional Mobility and Infrastructure. First of all, I just want to say that the BTF Coalition really appreciates the relative stability of this draft CTP compared to last year. Predictable and sustainable funding is essential to the region's economic growth. Our companies, our workers, our investors, both those here now, but also those that we want to attract, need to know that the state is committed to maintaining a strong and reliable transportation system. But stability isn't the same as sufficiency. First, Maryland must continue to keep pace with state of good repair needs, ensuring that light rail and metro, MARC, and the buses are resourced to be not just functional modes of necessity for some, but modern, dependable, best-in-class options for all. That really should be our goal. This year's CTP meets 90% of current state of good repair needs, which, of course, we all know is a significant improvement from where we were last year, thanks to the efforts of the governor and to a lot of folks in this room. Still, while the funds are there, we recognize that much work lies ahead to turn those program funds into actual completed projects. State of good repair needs to remain a top priority, and Baltimore's business community stands ready to work with you on critical projects like the light rail modernization plan that are funded in the CTP. That being said, we also need to remain focused on the future. Creating a system of choice requires that we invest in the kind of strategic expansion projects that make our transit system more accessible, more reliable, and that ultimately improves mobility for everyone. But as we've talked a lot here today, so I won't belabor the point, but we know that major priorities for system growth, like the Be More Bus Plan, like the Red Line, aren't fully funded in this CTP. We know that they're both essential to connecting workers to jobs, students to school, residents to goods and services and amenities. And funding that advances these projects really just should be considered a smart investment that's going to repay itself in long-term receipts over time. Financing delivering these priorities will be challenging, but Baltimore's business community encourages you to be creative and strategic, to just keep us moving forward, and we're prepared to be supportive however we can. Finally, I do want to just acknowledge that we too, like many in this room, are deeply concerned about the looming highway user revenue fiscal cliff. We know that if it's not addressed, jurisdictions, the city and around the state are going to face shortfalls that will just undermine the ability to undertake basic road and bridge maintenance and to address those backlogs, those critical backlogs that were created by prior funding cuts. This is, going to undermine safety, mobility, and ultimately and importantly, just increase costs over time. So firms and workers are the backbone of Maryland's economy. Our transportation system is its circulatory system, supporting business and population growth, housing and commercial development, and community vitality. And for this reason, we urge the state to sustain predictable and robust state of good repair investments, address the impending HUR declines, and accelerate funding for transformative projects like Be More Bus and like the Red Line. As always, BTF and GBC stand ready and willing partners in this work. Thanks so much. I just wanted to note Council President Cohen had to leave, and so he wanted to extend his apologies, but also thank you for coming here. And his staff is still here if you have any questions for them at any point.
Thank you so much. My name is Roger Schulman. I'm the president and CEO of the Fund for Educational Excellence, and I appreciate the opportunity to be up here. I also want to acknowledge my colleagues, Corey Schoenberg, Kwan Wyatt, and Jade Johnson, who frankly did a lot of the work that I'm about to talk about right here. For those of you who don't know, the Fund for Educational Excellence is a local nonprofit that believes that all Baltimore City public school students deserve an excellent and equitable education. The fund strives to build support for school system improvements, promote racially equitable policy and practice, attract and oversee philanthropic investments, and manage innovative programs that support city school students and communities. One of the ways that we do this is through qualitative research that amplifies the voices and experiences of students, families, and educators. About 5 years ago, we spoke with hundreds of students in Baltimore City Public School about how they get to and from school. These students represented a racially and geographically representative sample of our student population. And in 2021, we published a report called Not in Service, Why Public Transit Must Aim to Serve Students, that summarized these findings and recommendations. At least 25,000 city school students rely on MDOT MTA public transit, primarily buses, to travel to and from schools, jobs, internships, and extracurriculars. I think it's worth pointing out that while Baltimore City is the only school district in the state that relies on public transportation to get their students to and from schools, this is not at all uncommon. There are cities all around the country that use public transportation to get their high school students to and from school. These students are an estimated 18% of the annual ridership on core service in Baltimore, and transit frequency and reliability and its impact on student learning and opportunity were major themes of the interviews that we had with our students. Infrequent, unreliable transit can lead to lost learning time. We heard from so many students that they are late to school at least once and sometimes multiple times a week. Case in point, in 2018-2019, which was the last full school year before we issued our report, there were 20,653 high school students enrolled in city schools. Collectively, they were tardy to their first period class over 335,000 times, with 79% of high school students arriving late for first period at least once. Public transportation is the primary reason students cited to us for being late to school. And obviously, being late means huge impact on their grades and outcomes. So the Be More bus plan released by MDOT MTA in June would increase the frequency of bus services on weekdays, including outside of peak hours. Buses would arrive every 30 minutes or less on all routes and 10 minutes or less on 7 city link routes that serve to 21 schools. This additional services would decrease the amount of transfers that students have, would likely get them to school in far shorter periods of time, and help them participate in extracurricular activities and work after school, all of which are things many of us in this room say we care about. We urge MDOT and Governor Moore to fund and implement the Be More bus plan on an accelerated 6-year timeline. As many others have said, we cannot ask our students to wait 10 more years for better bus service. MTA's core transit service has been neglected for far too long. MDOT makes billions of dollars in capital investments every year in roads and highways, and as many people have talked about, the light rail modernization project is terrific, but it's the first major capital investment in over 30 years. So we ask that you fund the Be More bus plan in the current CTP and begin implementation now. Our students need and deserve frequent, reliable transportation to school, and it is long overdue. Investing in public transit to help students get to school both safely and on time promotes their future academic and career success, which in turn contributes to the long-term welfare of Baltimore and the economy of the state of Maryland. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Huber, and I'm the Director of Maryland Government Affairs at Johns Hopkins University of Medicine. It's an honor to be back in City Hall to request that MDOT provide the resources that the city and MTA needs in order to ensure a world-class transportation and transit system in the city of Baltimore. I'll be as brief as possible in the interest of time, but I'll point out that at Hopkins we employ about 40,000 people in the city and about 50,000 people in the state of Maryland, in addition to the countless patients and students. And to one degree or another, all of them rely on public transportation to get to appointments and to class and to work and for so many other purposes around town. And we are seeing now, as we recruit for faculty across the country in a very competitive market, that having a not only functional but really a world-class transit system is it becomes a factor in recruitment and retention efforts. And so we would encourage MDOT to maintain current levels of HUR funding. We should provide adequate resources for deferred maintenance. We should fund Be More Bus, and we further encourage MDOT to provide funding for state of good repair. It's in the interest of our employers, our patients, our students, and the economy as a whole that we do these things. I'm happy to take any questions. Happy to be here. All right, thank you.
You made it. We made it. Oh my God. Good afternoon. It's never good to be standing between such a large group of people and lunch, but I'll try and be quick. I'll skip some parts because you heard a lot of repetition today, I think, because there's a unity and clarity of purpose. My name is Eric Norton. I'm the Director of Policy and Programs for the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance. We advocate for improving and expanding transportation options for the people and businesses in Greater Baltimore. I'm also a Mount Washington resident and a parent of 2 city school students, one who bikes or walks to school and one who relies on MTA's light rail. So when I talk about the importance of investing in transit, biking, walking infrastructure, it's not abstract policy for me, it's personal, and it's personal for everyone in this room. We're all affected by the investments we make. And I remember when the light rail was first built, I was back in middle school. Our school was so close to one of the stations that we had a community engagement team come, as you do. And now I'm the parent of a middle schooler. And in those years between, Maryland has barely managed to maintain the system we have. If this draft CTP moves forward as written, fully implementing Be More Bus, no construction funding for the Red Line, no north-south corridor, then by the time my daughter graduates high school, fingers crossed, that'll be an entire generation where we'll just have barely maintained the status quo system. That's an entire generation with no meaningful transit investment. And that's why this budget matters so much. We appreciate the Moore-Miller administration stepping up to fund long overdue state of good repair projects like the light rail modernization program. We thank our legislators, who I think have mostly left, but we thank them for identifying revenue sources to put together a record-setting transportation budget. And while that maintenance is essential, it's not enough. Riders don't just want the system to survive, they want it to get better. They want transit that's faster, more frequent, and more reliable. And with $21.5 billion over the next 6 years, this is the largest CTP in state history, we think Maryland has the opportunity and the resources to make transformative investments. The question is whether Governor Moore will make it a priority. I'm going to skip my talking points on the Be More Bus because you've heard them all. Let's get on board Be More Bus. This draft CTP takes some steps in the right direction, and we recognize that progress, but we need to invest in growth, capacity, better service. We urge you to program funds for implementing Be More Bus fully and building that 5th bus division. We've never had more money in our transportation budget than we do right now. Let's use it to deliver a transportation system worthy of the people of Baltimore, not just for today, but for the next generation. And thank you so much.
Sorry, I was so close. Thank you, everybody. This was such a great, robust conversation, and you could hear the passion in the room about our needs for CTP, but more importantly, just the fair representation of those folks who are Baltimore residents. That being said, for me, I'm going to thank everybody. I would like to thank the council president, Councilman Dorsey, for their leadership in coordinating and bringing us all together. And of course, MDOT Secretary Biddle and her team and all of my colleagues who are also the sister agencies under MDOT. And thank you for your attendance. Thank you, community members. And of course, thank you for our advocacy partners and stakeholders and for taking the time to participate. So Secretary Biddle, if you have any remarks just to close out. Otherwise, that's it for me.
Thank you, Director Macbeth. You captured it all well. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we look forward to the continued collaboration. Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.